Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today's a very exciting day, not just for myself, but hopefully for you guys at home. I know we tore apart this twin cam back, man, it's been months. And before I get into details of what we actually ordered here, what all we have on this table, let me take a quick moment and thank again ThunderMax for sponsoring today's episode. ThunderMax is pretty much the leader, I would say, the go-to when it comes to standalone ECMs. They work great for performance applications, motor swap applications. NAMS offers a ThunderMax with a wiring harness to do an M8 swap FXR. They also have ECMs for Sportsters, V-Rods, Dynas, baggers, Softails, new and old. Whatever you have, if it's fuel injected, ThunderMax can get you taken care of in the performance department. Their ECMs are top quality. Their customer service is off the charts. Ryan, Jake, and all those guys over there really do take care of not just the people, but the industry as a whole. If there's a cool event going on, you could probably bet your ass that ThunderMax is a part of it. In the last episode, we also were doing kind of a ThunderMax giveaway. I didn't tell Ryan or Jake that I was giving away some of the stuff that they donated to us. I just said, you know what, I got extra stuff. I'm not going to use it all. Let me get some of you guys to have it. They saw the video and they liked the idea, so we'll probably do some more giveaways. But as far as that giveaway goes, let's pull out my phone and let's go to the comments on that last video. Got my phone right here. I'm just kind of scrolling through all the comments, and what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to stop my finger on one of them, and if that's your name, we'll figure out how to get you set up with your ThunderMax gear. So here we go. Boom. Alright, so the winner, Battleborn FXR. He wrote, I run the Thunderheart programmable. I love it. Keep up the great content. Battleborn FXR, if that is you, send me a message if you're on Instagram or something like that. I'll send you a message and then you send me a message back. We'll figure out how to get in touch, and then I'll get your address and get you all that stuff sent out. So appreciate it again, ThunderMax. Appreciate all the guys that watched the video. And like I said, in the near future, we're going to be doing it again with some more ThunderMax merch, maybe some more merch of our own. I know Justin's wanting to kind of make shirts and stuff like that. And plus, we got the FXR tour coming up, so we're going to definitely push some merch for that. I'll get back to you here after this video. But today's video, boom, twin cam. What we're dealing with here, we have an 88-inch twin cam out of a 2001 bagger. Basically, this is going to be what they considered the early twin cam. This whole entire drivetrain came from Jeremy at Lucky Strike. So he wasn't using it. Perfect for me because I can use it. So this is an 88-inch early twin cam, meaning 99 to 06. It's got a different style cam plate, and there's some little differences in it, and we'll go over all that as we're assembling this motor. But basically what we have here is the Zippers 95-inch big bore kit. Steve and Dan's been kind of my point of contact over there at Zippers. They've been a tremendous amount of help, because basically what all I had to do was just tell them kind of what I wanted to do with the bike, my ideas for it, and they pretty much put a kit together. To me, it's kind of like the best of the best, because I feel like there's a lot of companies out there, they offer a complete ready-to-go setup, but maybe their lifters aren't the best lifter on the market, or maybe their oil pump isn't the best oil pump on the market. I feel like what Zippers did here, they combined what they felt was the best of the best and put it together for a kit. So what this kit is actually going to be running, it's going to be running their cam plate. We're actually upgrading to hydraulic tensioners. If you don't know, these early twin cams actually had spring-loaded tensioners, and with the spring load, there's no way of really kind of regulating the amount of pressure on them, so therefore the pads on your actual cam tensioners would wear out fairly fast. I would say a safe bet is if your twin cam has somewhere between 40 to 50,000 miles and you have yet to change them, you probably want to do that. So this is going to go with the newer style, which in 07 they kind of switched that over. Basically the tensioner uses hydraulic, or not hydraulic, but it uses oil pressure, pushes a piston out, the pad then pushes against the chain, and it just keeps everything nice and tight, but not too tight, if that makes sense. And Zipper actually has a patent design double piston. So rather than just one kind of oil hydraulic piston pushing against the pad and putting all this pressure on, they have two that kind of disperse the pressure. Runs their cam plate, it runs their cams. This is actually the Redshift 511s. Screaming Eagle oil pump. They actually use genuine Harley jugs. So these are the original 88-inch jugs, and they just expanded the bore size. I think it's to, I don't know why I want to say 3.875, but I could be wrong. It basically does like the 103 size piston, but you got the stroke and everything of the 88, which just makes it 95 inches. I went with the lower compression. This is the 9.2. Reason being, yes, I'm leaving horsepower on the table, but I don't need all the horsepower. I'm literally building this bike to ride. I've had the heads reworked by Andy over at Howland Cycles. Basically, he did a very mild port work, just kind of cleaned out a little bit of the slag inside the heads, cleaned them up, relapped the valves, new valve seals, inspected everything. Everything looks great. So those things are fully ready to go back on. And then our block right here is obviously the same thing. It's flushed, it's cleaned. Our run out has been checked, it's good. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and get this camera set up a little bit closer, and we're gonna really start kind of showing you what I have as we're installing it. We'll go from there. So here we are, we're starting off with the engine block. First thing we need to do is I've prepped most of it as far as cleaning and kind of getting some things together. But what we have to do first and foremost is get these cam bearings swapped out to the upgraded ones. But one has already been switched out, so I can actually show you guys the difference. The brand new upgraded cam bearing and then your genuine Harley, what would have been in there from the factory. But if you look, you got quite a bit of roller bearings in there. There's really no gap in the cage for the bearings, so you're getting more contact. There's literally probably twice as many roller bearings in the upgraded new ones compared to the genuine Harley, the old ones that came out. I've already switched out one, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you how we're going to pull the other one out with the proper tool and install the new bearing. So what we have here is this is your actual cam bearing puller. This end right here is going to get inserted into your old cam bearing, and then you're going to crank down this nut. These teeth are going to grab the backside. It's going to pull it. It's going to pull the bearing out. We're just going to get it set in here real quick. You'll feel it kind of pop in there. Put a little bit of pressure on it so it stays. And then before you get to really cranking on it, you need to insert this rod all the way through. Basically what this is going to do is it's going to keep those teeth nice and separated. Next up, what you're going to do is you're just going to hold this in and you're just going to tighten this in. As you're tightening it, like I said, it's going to be pulling. You can actually start feeling it, but it's going to pull your bearing out, and then this whole thing is going to come out with the old bearing inside. But there you have it. There's the old bearing off. We can discard this, and we can get rid of this tool now. Make sure there's no metal shavings or anything in there. Everything looks good. Make sure there's no gouging. It all looks nice. Now, just to keep everything from being installed dry, this is that kind of that sticky stuff. Now on this bearing, I don't know if it's gonna, again, if it's gonna zoom in or not. There's actually some wording, some lettering on the outside, only on one side. The side that has the lettering on it, you want to be facing you. So when you put it in, that side needs to stick out. Next tool we're using is the actual installer. Now there's going to come with two different sizes of these. Late model and early model. Early model is a little bit smaller diameter, so you just want to make sure you get the right one. You get this thing up on here. There's a little hole for your dowel. So you line that up, and you just take your supply thumb screws. It's going to have 4 of them with you. You don't have to make this super tight, but you do want it nice and firm. So you don't want it to move or anything while you're running this in. Make sure it's running into the bearing. If you have a flashlight or something, just make sure it's pushing the bearing in nice and flat. And you're just going to run it in until this thing stops. All right, I feel like we're stopped. We'll pull this off. We're going to double check it. Everything looks good. We'll pull the rest of this plate off. So let me get my flashlight. All right. So now I'm going to remove this whole plate, and I'll show you kind of what's going on in there. All right, as you can see in there, both bearings are pretty well flush. The cams themselves are actually pressed into the cam plate, so there's no checking or anything that you need to do as far as clearance. But put a little bit of lube inside the bearings. This is going to help prevent any type of dry starting. Lube. Crank journal. This is what actually rides on the oil pump itself. Get all that lubed up. So one thing I really like about the James kit is that it does kind of organize this. It puts gaskets together to help you know kind of what's what. So there's a lot of O-rings, but this whole kit's together. This is your entire oil pump. There's O-rings for when you reach in here. There's O-rings that are used on your breather. So anything related to the breather is in this little bag. When you pull some more little baggies out, this is going to be all your pushrod tubes and so forth and so on. So they do kind of help you from playing the guessing game to kind of know what gasket's what. So what we need first is we need this big O-ring that goes inside the block before we can put the oil pump on. On all your rubber seals, you don't want to put any of these things in there dry, merely for the fact that the oil actually kind of keeps them soft and lubricated to where they don't crack and break or split, or when you're going to assemble it, it doesn't snag and possibly tear or rip. So we're just going to put a little bit of, this is actually just got some 2050 motor oil in it. So it's the same motor oil that's going to be running in the bike anyways. Go ahead and install this onto our oil pump like so. Alright, so we're getting ready to install our oil pump to our actual cam plate. And I wanted to go ahead and show you something that I had done off camera, obviously. On these early twin cams, the 99 through 06, you actually have to press your cams into your actual cam plate. These bearings, when Zipper sends this kit out, these bearings are not installed. Basically what Andy had to do, like I said, I don't have the tool, is there's a Jim's tool that sits on here and you can press everything together, get it all nice and lined up so that way you're not banging it, possibly, you know, putting something in an angle or whatever. So he got everything in. There is a cam bearing retainer plate that gets torqued in. It's behind all this. When you're doing all this, you got to make sure your cams are aligned. So there's cam timing marks on your cam, so you want to make sure those things are aligned before you go to put the chain on and your new tensioner. So he went ahead and set this whole thing up for me. Another really good thing about Zippers and what I like about what they do is everything that they do on their motor kits is fully documented. So I don't know if you ever heard the term balance blueprinted, or just a blueprinted motor in general. This is what it is. It's telling you right here the date of when they actually took this cam plate. They did some pressure testing. They got the valves. There's a way of going in there and kind of setting the depth to create or take away pressure. So it shows me what all my PSI for my relief valves are, what spring size and everything like that. So something kind of cool, something to hold on to. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our oil pump bolted to the back of this, not tight, not torqued, but just bolted to this so that way we can slide this whole assembly into the motor. The way we go about doing that first is we need to go ahead and throw some assembly lube on all our gears, assemble all the gears into here, and then we're going to put it on here with the 4 screws. Now I'm reusing the hardware that came out of the old motor, but before I do, I took everything over to the wire wheel. I got a little bench grinder and I cleaned all the threads, so everything's fresh. I looked at it, I examined it, everything looks good. And when we go to put these screws back into the oil pump, it specifically tells you do not use Loctite on any of the internal hardware. Just some Molly B, some assembly lube, whatever you want to put on here, a little bit of oil on the head, and it'll give you a nice true torque. Let's get this oil pump lubed up. Let's get all the gears put back inside, bolted to the cam plate. Again, always make sure everything that you're working is clean. Even though this is a brand new item, these are brand new items, there's still a little bit of residue on there. One thing that I do like to use is you can use a little can of ether. So you can use some starter fluid or brake clean or carb cleaner. Everyone's got their own techniques, but you can go in there, spray a little bit in there, and it's going to give you a good sterile cleaning. It's going to get everything out of there without leaving any type of residue or anything behind. And then we're going to start lubing the parts and assemble them inside here.
So we got the cam plate and everything torqued on. If you notice, I know I didn't really talk while I was doing it, but what you're going to do is get this kind of finger tight oil pump to the cam plate. Once you get it centered up, before you put these bolts in, you're spinning the motor around a few times, and what that it's actually doing is that's going to center up your oil pump to the crankshaft. You don't want it misaligned, because what it's going to do is it's going to wear out your cam or your actual crank journal and possibly, you know, completely damage the motor, putting metal through it and creating clearances where you don't want clearances created. So you're going to rotate it a few times, and then you're going to torque it and just keep increasing it. So torque it at 45, rotate it a bunch of times, torque it at 90. It's got numbers on here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of do like a star pattern. Rotate it a bunch more times, and then you're going to do a final torque of 120 inch-pounds, rotating a bunch, and then you're going to start doing all this. Now with the Zippers kit, they did supply these 2 bolts. I don't know why, but for some reason they sent these 2, which seem to be the same length as these, but this is what they said, is to put their supplied bolts in this position, and then you can use all your factory bolts. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the cam gears, or the cam and the crank together. And the first thing we have to do, you got your rear cam spacer, clean it, make sure it's nice and clean, and you're going to stick that on there along with your cam sprocket. Now, your cam sprocket might look a little different than this. It might not have this lip on it. It's perfectly okay. This, like I said, this motor was a 2001 EFI motor, and it actually used a cam phase pickup of sort that kind of read through the cam cover. We're not having to use that anymore. However, you can still use the same camshaft timing gear. So we're going to go ahead and install that, get it to a nice little spot. We'll line it all up later. And get your bottom one on there. And then what I like to do is just take a nice clean straight edge, and you're going to put it as flat against this, as much material that you can make happen against this and against this. What you're trying to do is you're trying to measure the distance, pushing both these firmly in. Now you can either put your bolts in and torque these in. I think, I didn't look at the instructions, but I think Redshift actually does, or Zippers actually does recommend you to put the bolts in and torque these, but I'm just going to push against them. There's practically no gap. So since I know that my crank and my cams are perfectly lined up, I can pull all this back apart. Actually, let me go ahead and line this up. So let's move the crank just a little bit. Get the cams turned in to where both my timing marks are going to line up perfectly. If it's not lined up, it's going to throw the timing way off. It's either going to advance the timing too much or retard the timing. Even if it's just off one tooth, the bike's not going to run right. You're going to constantly keep fighting issues. Make sure this is all done correctly the first time, and you won't have no problems down the road. So we're going to take both these pieces off. I got my chain all nice and clean. I'm going to stick it in there with my mark pointing straight down, and then I'm just going to come in here and line it up to where when I pull tension on it, both marks are perfectly lined up with each other. And then I'm going to sit it on there in that same manner. So when I pull my chain tight, when I have tension on the chain, because there's going to be a tension right here, my dot to dot is perfectly lined up. And now I know that my timing is perfect, and I can go ahead and put my bolts back in and torque these things down. Alright, now that we got everything torqued, I got the new double piston tensioner on. I rotated again, no binding, no nothing, so everything should be good. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and drop the lifters in. I did kind of the old school overnight, let them kind of bleed out. I pumped a little bit of oil with my oil can into the lifters, and then I dropped them in some 2050 weight oil and just let them sit. You'll see some bubbles come out periodically. I kind of went in there, shook them up a little bit. You know, if you got the time, you can bleed them out. 9 Finger, Mikey that makes all these little caps and stuff that I'm using, He actually makes a vacuum canister. It's one of these. It's just a mason jar. It's got a little pull out. You put your lifters in there, and then you use like a brake bleeder. It pulls a bunch of volume, a bunch of air, and it forces the oil into the lifters immediately. For me, like I said, I had the time, so I just let it sit overnight. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull each one of these out. I'm gonna drop them in, and then to hold them in, they got these little pins. These are the anti-rotation pins. They just kind of sit on top of the block. So the lifter goes in, you put the pin in there, and then you can put your caps on, and then I can put my cover on here. But first, there's one thing I gotta modify on my cover before I can install it, and I'll show you what we gotta do there to clear this big, bad mamma jamma. Alright, now that you have your lifters in place and you have your little kind of anti-rotation bars in there, we're going to put the gaskets on. Pretty self-explanatory. There's a straight edge and a kind of like a little curve. So we're going to set the gasket on there. And then we're going to sit our lifter block on there. One thing I did go out and spend a little extra money on is ARP hardware. So this is a company right here, alloybolts.com. I know there's a lot of places. I know Fuelin makes like an engine bolt kit, and a few other guys, you know, they've kind of pieced together kits and sold it. This company will offer you show polish or just your standard ARP. I'm not gonna say they're inexpensive, but for what you get, they're not that bad. So all the hardware on this motor is gonna be ARP minus the head bolts. Now, Fuelin does offer a head bolt kit that uses ARP bolts, but not that I didn't need it. You can always use additional strength, but this ain't a high compression motor, so I just opted for some genuine Harley brand new head bolts, and you know, we'll get to that point when we get up there. But as far as the rest of this motor goes, all my covers are going to be held together with ARP. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, we're going to get these on there, we'll get these torqued down, and pretty much this will be buttoned up minus the cover. Like I said, there's one little thing that we got to do to it real quick. So let's get these bolts on and work on this cover. All right, the camera kind of overheated while I was bolting the tappet block covers on, but you get the idea. Still, just like anything else, crisscross pattern when you go to torque. You don't want to just torque down one side and cinch it all the way down. You could possibly crack it or, you know, damage the block or anything like that. So those are on, everything's in. Now we get to do our cam cover. And like I said, I wanted to show you something real quick on this cam cover before we install it. This right here is the factory cam cover that came on this motor. It had a sensor that it read using this little lip from the cam gear right there, and it goes all the way through, and you can actually, well, there's hardware in there, but it goes through where your points cover actually attaches. So the sensor goes in there, and then the wire comes out right here. So if you're not running that, you have a possibility of oil coming in here and coming out. What you'd have to do is either cut the wire, leave the sensor in, or do like I did and just find a slightly later model one that does not have the center hole. Now, before I purchased this is a genuine Harley takeoff. It's mint. I mean, it's got fingerprints on the stuff right now, but this thing's absolutely mint. And to me, I just like using factory Harley chrome versus like drag specialties or something, just because of the longevity of it. But the 2000, I think up to 5 or 6, has this webbing inside of it. Now, all the twin cam covers can work, and had I known that I could have used something without the webbing, I would have probably bought that. Because what I had to do, that little double piston chain tensioner right there, you have to make clearance. And basically, right there, this one, I don't know if it's zooming in or not, but that one web right there, you can see how it's a little shaped differently than all those. Cut that one out, grind it, smooth it to make the clearance. To clear that, we're going to get this thing bolted on, and basically the bottom portion, the cam area, will be done, completed, and then we can put the pistons on, jugs, heads, and finish this thing up. So let me set you back up, let's get this cam cover on, and move on to the next step. All right, one thing I can really appreciate that Zippers does, like I said, I've never used S&S products, so I cannot vouch for what they do or do not do. But with the Zippers kit, something that, you know, if you've ever built like I'm not gonna say like a high horsepower, but if you built like a motor, you probably heard of the term ring gap.
Basically what ring gap means is that the rings, where they come together, the gap that's in between there allows for the piston to actually expand or contract under heat. Too tight sometimes can actually kind of cut into the piston and cause like the head of the piston to lift. Too loose obviously is going to add a lot of blow by, creating smoke. Depending on the type of power adder you're using, sometimes they recommend looser ring gaps, and sometimes they recommend tighter ring gaps. And one thing that Zippers does do, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the blueprinting. So they set each ring into the cylinder. Basically what they'll do is they'll pinch it, they'll run it, put it into the cylinder, and they'll figure out like the distance in between there. And if they need to take a little bit of material off, they got a ring filer that will actually shave the material off the ring. And then on the package, they actually list, so that way you know it's been done, your ring gaps for this is for your front cylinder. So these piston rings must go to your front cylinder. Obviously I've already assembled one, but your rear piston rings must go to your rear cylinder. What we're going to do is we're going to install these we're still working on the front cylinder now. We're going ahead and install these onto our piston. I don't know if I mentioned it as well, the lifters are actually fueling, which to me, probably some of the best lifters on the market. I've had, every bike I've ever had, I've put in fuel and lifters in it. This motor is equipped with it, and that wasn't even by my choice, that was by Zipper's choice. They see the quality in that product. They see the quality in the Screaming Eagle oil pump. They see the quality in the Keith Black pistons. They piece together something that they know that works without having to sell you what they make. Does that make sense? And I really, really like that. We're gonna go ahead and get these piston rings installed. You got your oil ring. Basically your oil ring is made up of 3 components. You got your actual kind of, I don't know what they call this one. I mean, it's all pretty much the scraper. Basically this is gonna be at the very bottom. When the oil comes up, it's what cleans the oil off the cylinder. So as the piston's going up and down, none of that oil should be getting above the piston. If it does, we have other rings that kind of can help, but those are more for compression. This one, like I said, this is going to be your oil scraping ring. So it's 3 parts. You put the centerpiece in first. It's just easier. You get that piece in, and then you're going to put your top and your bottom in there. And then you're going to have 2 more piston rings. These, like I said, these are your compression rings. You got your top, and it's actually got the word top etched into it. And then you have another one. They actually put a little dot on here to let you know that this is the way that they measured it. So they measured it going in to the cylinder this way. So we're going to put it on the piston the same way that they measured it. And then another really cool feature that they use, kind of odd looking, if it's even zooming in, but it's a spring loaded clip. And basically what you do is you get one side of it started, and then you kind of push around and it walks itself in almost like your key ring. So really cool design. I really like it. It feels nice and secure. I wanted to get one piston done because I've never messed with these, and I just wanted to, before I get on here and start talking and, you know, act like I know what I'm doing, I wanted to make sure that I do kind of know what I'm doing. Let's get these rings on, let's get this piston on, and then we can start getting the cylinders on, heads on, finishing this thing up. This one is number 1. So you start here, 9 pounds, 9 foot-pounds. Go to number 3, this bolt right here. Then we increase it to 14 pounds. Same sequence, start right here. 1, 2, then 22, 35, and then the final torque of 42. All right, we're getting down to the end of it. I wanted to stop right now and kind of really point something out that I've seen a lot. Hanging out at Andy's shop, obviously he gets a vast variety of motorcycles in, and I've noticed one of the key problems I would say to the twin cam stuff, especially a twin cam that's ever been worked on, is this upper gasket. This is the rocker box gaskets, the lower of the rocker box gaskets being installed incorrectly. So as you can see, there's a cutout, two little cutouts there, and no cutout over here. There's actually a passage up here on the top of the head. I don't know if you can see it from where you're at, but there's a passage right here. This is where the breather, the engine actually breathes. So there's crankcase pressure down here, and it's building up the pressure, and the pressure rises to the top. It comes up through the breather, which I'm going to explain that here in a little bit. Comes out this hole, and then it's going to migrate over to this hole and come out your breather bolts. Your breather bolts are then attached to your air cleaner, and it's either going to recirculate back into your throttle body, carburetor, whatever area, or if you have like an external breather, it will just recirculate out into that. This has to go a certain way. This encasement right here, if you see this area, that is blocking the passage of oil, air, or anything. It's going to let the air travel down, and then it's going to work its way over to the breather bolt. If you have it this way, the breather come out, it just sprays everywhere, and then also you're not going to get a really good firm seal, so it's going to create a small leak. Now the leak won't be noticed right away, but over time it will leak, and it's crazy how many bikes I have seen and have this backwards. So another good way to know which way it goes, if you put it on here and you have it upside down, you'll know right away that you have it upside down because you can see the passage that I was just describing. You can actually see it. Also, clean surface. You'll notice Andy obviously cleaned the heads for me when he did that. As far as the rocker boxes go, usually you can just use like a paint scraper. Be very careful. You don't want to nick into your aluminum or into the cases or rocker boxes and stuff like that, because it could create a leak. And then what you can also do is once you have everything done, if you take a razor blade and you go backwards, so you don't dig in, you actually just go like this, it will kind of help clean the surfaces and get off any other, hard to get or left behind kind of residue. So yeah, make sure all your parts are clean, make sure everything's ready to go. We do have one little O-ring, going back to that breather that I was talking about, there is one little O-ring that you'll need to pick out, discard it. Even if the O-rings look good, they come in the kit, never reuse them, just put the new O-ring on there. Like I said, everything on here is clean. We got the gasket on the correct spot, so we're gonna go ahead and set this up on here. My workbench is sitting pretty tall too. I need to lower it. A little dab of blue Loctite. Now it's gonna have two different sizes. Obviously your longer ones are gonna go in this very back section, and then your shorter ones will be the 4 bolts towards the front. Now in the owner's, or in the repair manual, there is a torque sequence that we will follow. I'm just getting the bolts to touch the covers all the way around, going in a crisscross pattern, so that way it's laying down evenly. So it's telling me to torque them from between 120 to 168. So when it comes to the pushrod tube assembly, you need to install those before you go ahead and put your pushrods in, and we need to put the pushrods in before you put the rocker arms on. So you get your pushrod tube. This is actually your lower tube. You want to kind of have your upper tube that you don't really see, because you're going to have your little pull down centerpiece. This is what's going to help keep your upper cover that covers up this part of the tube secured against the top of the head. And the way it does that is by a little spring. And also don't forget that there is a little metal washer for your O-ring. You're going to have a larger diameter O-ring. That one's going to go on the bottom of your pushrod tube. That's actually going to slide into the tablet block cover. You're going to put that on first. As far as your upper pushrod cover goes, the first thing you need to do is to assemble it. You need to put your little slip piece upside down to where the top of it matches the top of this flange. So just like so. We're going to drop our spring inside. To ride against the spring, there's a little flat washer. You need to make sure you reuse that, save it. Then once you have all that together, there's going to be a thinner O-ring, but it's just the size of your tube. So you're going to slide that all the way down. Once you slide that all the way down,
That's going to go inside of this component. And at your tip top is going to be the smaller, thicker O-ring. Now this is what's actually going to sit inside the head. So we're going to start with the back one. This is just it's easier to do the back now. You're basically going to get the bottom in nice and flat. You can actually use the assistance of a little screwdriver. You're going to push this top tube up until you get a positive engagement. There it is. Until it holds itself. So that lets you know that that O-ring is pressed in there and it's not going to go anywhere. Same thing with the bottom. Make sure you got positive engagement. Now there's a lot of different ways people have to push down on these and hold them. What I like to do, and it might not be the smartest way, but it works for me, is you got all these fins, use them to your advantage, just leverage. So get behind there. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on it. I'm going to people in the comments freaking out that I'm doing it this way. I already know it. Make sure nothing fell, make sure everything looks flat. Now as far as your push rods go, you have two push rods. The book's going to call them silver and black. Reason being, one of them's a little darker, especially on the ball tip. If you were to buy these brand new from Harley, the silver and black feature would be much more noticeable. But because these are the original push rods that came out of this motor, I've checked them. They're not bent, they're not warped or anything. So everything's good to go. I'm going to reuse them. But you can tell that the tips are a little bit darker. But another way you can tell what's what is the length. So the black one's actually a little bit longer. So you're going to put your silver one on your intake side. How do you know which one's your intake side? Whatever valve is closest to the object it's opening. So this valve, this push rod is closer to your intake. That's your intake. This push rod is going to be closer to your exhaust. That's your exhaust. Again, anytime you're taking anything apart, make sure especially if you're reusing anything, even with new parts, just make sure you inspect them. Make sure there's no cracks in the casting. You know, make sure the pins are nice and tight. Make sure your tips on here are not overly worn. They're going to have obviously marks on them from riding on top of the valves, but just make sure they're not overly worn. And same thing for where the push rods make contact. Make sure there's no nicks or cuts or scrapes or anything like that. But everything turned out good on these, so we're ready to install them. What we're going to do is we're going to set this assembly down in there. There's 4 screws that actually hold the rocker arms on, and then I'm going to show you this breather assembly here in a second. Another big thing, and I did it when I was assembling it, and I guess I didn't mention it to you guys. I kept the cam on its base circle, so right now you can see that both these are on the same plane. You don't want to torque this on the cam set to open your intake valve, because then you got the possibility of cracking this, you know, torquing it or mushrooming something or just whatever. So try to have it in the back of your head as you're assembling it. Everything needs to sit a certain way. All right, same thing with all our other bolts. We cleaned them, little blue Loctite. We got it all in there, and now we're going to torque the bolts to 22 foot-pounds. Now, like I was saying, the breather assembly. So earlier I was talking about the crankcase actually needs the chance to breathe. So what you have is you have a actual breather assembly. We already set the O-ring to the bottom of this to assemble the rest of this breather. Now you can just go ahead and buy brand new breathers from Harley and they'll be fully assembled. But this James kit came with all the pieces you need. So basically, real simple. There's kind of like a little check valve flapper. So you just push this in till you got engagement on the back side. You're going to take your breather element, stuff it in there the best you can. You got this gasket. It's going to go on the block side of that, and then on the top side, another gasket, and then your kind of your top cap breather. All those pieces together. 2 bolts, again, clean the threads, assemble it all as such, and then it only goes on one way. Can't really mess this one up too bad. saw me just turn the motor over a few times. You want to make sure, even though I checked all the binding for the oil pump, make sure with the rocker arms and everything like that, that there's no binding up there as well. Everything's good, everything checked out. We're fully torqued down. The last thing we need to do is install the intake. This was a fuel injected motor. We're going carburetor with it. So you do have to use a carbureted intake. Now you can use the flanges and everything off the old EFI that was on this motor, but the intake itself needs to be used for carbureted purposes. Like if you had the original ignition and everything like that, genuine Harley, and I think even if you went to like the Twincam and a couple of the other companies, you would still have to run like a map sensor, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. Maybe, you know, y'all can let me know, educate me down in the comments. But for the Thunderheart, I do not have to run it. So that I do know. Andy, when I picked this intake up from him, when I got the heads, he went ahead, he painted it black. But he also tapped and put a bolt in place with a little seal in place of where the map sensor goes. This one he just did to be fancy. It's not necessary, but this one is. And when you put a bolt in there, you don't want to just put any bolt on there. Make sure, I don't know if it will kind of show you in there, but make sure the bolt's not protruding into your intake. You're going to lose airflow, create a little bit of turbulence. Yeah, just make it as efficient as possible. So try to find a bolt that's the exact size. If you have to maybe stack a second washer on there, whatever, to get it, or in his case, he actually kind of milled it down and made it nice and smooth. Get those in there. Now we're just going to snug these down. Andy taught me a long time ago to tighten your intake up with your carburetor in place. So once you put your carburetor, you have your carburetor backing plate that bolts into this spot. You know, I could tighten this down and have it up a little too high or down a little too high or down a little too low. It's always best to just get this really nice and snug. We're going to put some tape over this to cap it. That's it. Just get it on there. I'm going to put a little wrench on the back. I'll get it, like I said, just a little tighter than it is right now. But I'm not going to tighten it all the way up. We're actually going to, like I said, mate everything together. So yeah, there it is. Zippers 95. I think they call it their Hot Streak kit. If you go on Zipper's website, they have an engine combination for all things Harley, basically. They've been around for a few decades now. My dad's old 05 Springer had a 95-inch kit in it. I've ran their Redshift cams in the past. I'm really excited to try this thing out. Now, I could have, like I said, went with more compression, bigger cams, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, after talking to Dan and Steve over at Zippers, this is kind of the recommendation that they made for me. This is what they felt will suit my needs the best, and I agree. Anything more would have just been maybe a little too rowdy for the street. Not the street, but for distance riding. You know, the last thing I want to do is be working on my bike. You know, if I'm upstate New York or California or wherever, I don't want to put wrenches on my bike. I just want to ride it. I want to enjoy it. And if something happens, I pray that it happens at home and I can fix it then. So real quick to kind of give you guys a little bit of updates on what's going on with us. I know May 24th, Dream Rides out in Tennessee. John, Jesse, Coley, all those guys out there. Justin and I are riding out to Maryville. We're going to be spending the day with those guys. Checking out the shop, and we're going to give you a little shop tour. We'll show you kind of what they got going on. I know Jesse and the boys have a ton of FXRs going on. I know he does stuff at his house, but the shop seems to be filled with stuff as well. So we're going to make a stop by there on our way to the East Coast FXR Jam. I've spoke about the East Coast Jam. If you don't know it by now, if you've been watching us and watching FXRs and you don't know about the East Coast Jam, I don't know what to tell you because I talk about it pretty much on every episode. We're excited. We're heading up there. We're going to try to make the journey to stop off first once we leave Maryville. We'll kick in DC. That's probably going to be our stay-in night for the night. And then we're going to ride up to Brooklyn. We're going to go see Bobby, John the Painter, all those boys over at Indian Larry Motorcycles. We're going to ride Manhattan, ride Times Square, do all that kind of stuff. The stuff I didn't get to do last time, we're going to do it this time. We're going to leave there. We're going to go to New Haven once again. We're going to hang out with Ashley. If you don't remember who Ashley is, Ashley Greetings is from our first ever FXR tour. He was the 10th builder from England, transplanted into the US, and was a perfect pick for the 10th spot. We're going to hang out with him again, check out what he's got going on before heading our way to Boston, Massachusetts, well, a little north of Boston, to check out John and over at Metal Innovations. Looking forward to that shop tour. I saw the little video that him and Steve from Speed Kings did, and it was incredible just seeing the parts alone. I mean, the bikes and everything like that's cool, but the parts that he's got,
new and old is incredible. So go and do that. That has us arriving into Boston Wednesday. We don't have to be at the jam until Friday. So Thursday, I think Justin and I are going to try to maybe head up to Maine, maybe have lunch in Maine, and then do the slow trek to East Durham, New York for the event, and then back home. So we hope you guys show up. We hope you guys have fun, get out, ride your bikes, and if you're going to be at the East Coast Jam, definitely holler at us. I'll be on my blue bike. Justin will be on his M8 FXR. We're going to do a video this week, kind of going over our bikes, getting them ready for the jam, and then, of course, the jam. Bad boy update. I got some bad powder. If you follow me on Instagram, you already saw it. I'm not happy. I try to be happy with this, and yeah. So in the next video on the bad boy, you'll see the lack of powder coat that I received, and which is another thing why I've been kind of slow on this bike, is that the frame was by that same shop, and there's some spots in it that I'm not very happy with, and I've been just fighting the urge to just say, screw it. It's going to get covered up by the gas tank or this or that. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, man, I want it perfect. I've never gone this far on a motorcycle before. I said that with the blue bike, but this one I'm even going further as far as what I'm doing, cutting the frame, custom paint, all that sort of stuff. I'm just trying to make myself happy to build it. And to do so, I probably need to have the frame redone again. Jeremy at Lucky Strike has the 10s. They are done. They are amazing. I'm sure he's going to be posting a photo of them on Instagram here soon, so you guys on Instagram will get first look at them. But anyways, hope you guys learned something. If you got any questions, additional items like tools and stuff that were purchased, definitely just reach out. Get in your garage and build something. I just built a motor in probably, I don't know, 3-4 hours. Bike's going to be a ripper. Hope to see you guys at the East Coast Jam and every other event following that. So y'all take care, and we'll see you later. Peace.